Good afternoon. My name is Marlene Fong, and I work for CTA's Instruction and Professional Development Department. And today you are witnessing a webinar on building connection and culture in your classroom, and we should say parenthetically, online or virtually. Our presenter today is Drew Warden. He is an elementary teacher and coach in the West Side Union District, elementary district. So we're going to do a couple of just promos. So could I have the next slide? So today we want to just talk to you a little bit about the schools and communities first. Uh, that's going to be on the ballot in November. That's going to help education and communities by closing the loopholes on the biggest corporations to fund additional needs for education. So we encourage you to find out more and also help support this piece of or this referendum on the November ballot. So next, please. Part of this August, the first 2 weeks of August, our department is providing this distance learning support series to help teachers get acclimated or reacclimated into an on-learning environment for their classrooms. And this is our August launch for the next 2 weeks. And we've divided up our webinar series into an elementary and a secondary offering for each one of our topics. So we've done some surveying, talking to members, and we kind of put into a kind of buckets the different topics that teachers are concerned about. So the next slide will show you the supports that we're providing, from dealing with rich content and effective pedagogy to systems that support and improvement, the equity and access and advocacy, and the culture, engagement, and social emotional learning. And that's a huge piece for us. So I just went counterclockwise on you, but basically these are the 4 areas that we will be providing webinars throughout the first 2 weeks of August. We will reevaluate your input to us, and we will continue to offer into September and possibly October and November. But we are launching right away with these webinars. So without further ado, hey, Drew, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to start out with just a question for you. It is really hard to do distance learning when you don't get to see faces and you don't get to interact. And I have an interaction question for you. Give me one word to describe yourself as a teacher. Just one word. And put it in the chat. And if you're on YouTube, put it in that so that we can see.
So Drew, we're getting some very passionate adjectives that describe our group coming in. They're very enthusiastic and dedicated, a very positive group. So we're here to fill them up with good experiences, hearing about how to create that culture and take it into the virtual classroom.
And I'm getting a lot of caring and dedicated, silly, empathetic, inclusive on the YouTube live stream chat.
Nice. I really appreciate those answers, because those answers are going to be able to push us up and beyond, and be able, as educators, help us to fly and become superheroes like we already are. I mean, come on, we're superheroes. Think about the things that we do every day. the way we impact students, and the way that we connect. The thing that breaks our hearts the most is that we won't be able to see our students walk in the door and give them that kind of support that we're used to giving them. So now that we don't have that, a lot of us don't. Some of us are starting with distance learning. Some of us are starting out with a hybrid model. Depends on where you are in California. And also your grade level also influences how you feel about that connection. And I know a lot of us are feeling kind of a little bit of anxiety about trying to connect with our students. And this training is mostly about how we can take what we know about ourselves, about us as educators, that one word that you just used, and make our experience in distance learning better. I'm Drew Warden, and I am a teacher for 27 years, elementary. I taught 5th grade for 20 years, and this is my 7th year outside the classroom teaching teachers as well as students how to use technology in the classroom and accessing the standards. I work in the Westside Union School District. I don't know if I said that. Westside Teachers Association's second VP. I am the negotiation chair. I'm also the grievance chair. And I'm a state council rep for CTA. And I was an NEA rep for my district as well this year. So I wear a lot of hats, and our organization is so important. It's so important because as we go through this presentation, I'm going to be talking a lot about how we as teachers connect with each other to bring ourselves and our game up. Remember, distance learning, it's all about your classroom. It's all about your classroom. Think about it. It doesn't matter where you are and what you're doing. You can be at a grocery store, and what do you see? You see a kid and they're misbehaving, you give them that teacher look. I know, I do it too. Everywhere we go, we make that location our place to educate and to teach. It doesn't matter that they're distance learning. It is still your classroom. It is still everything that you want it to be, and it fulfills your expectations. Remember, we need to give clear expectations. When we, as teachers, think about our year, we close our eyes and we think about our year and what it's going to be like, we always set our expectations as to what we need to do and how we can overcome those obstacles that maybe happened last year. We had a 4th quarter that maybe didn't turn out the way we wanted it to turn out. Well, this is our opportunity to make it better, to make it excellent for not only ourselves, but for our parents and students. And this starts with number 1, with clear expectations. We need to raise the bar. You know this as well as I, that high expectations for our students help. If we keep them low and we say, well, you know, they have these difficulties and they have these problems and that sort of thing. As soon as we start making excuses for why we're not setting our high expectations, then they're not going to achieve them. They will have no opportunity to achieve high expectations if we don't give them high expectations. Here's a quote. You can look online, find them just like I can. They're all over the place. We know that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy if we give them low expectations. So we need to make sure that it's high for all of our students. We have to think about what we expect from our students. And we need to make sure that it's clearly communicated to not only to our parents, but our students, as well as to ourselves, exactly what we expect from our students. Here are a few things on this slide that might help you with some of your thoughts as to what to expect. Obviously, we're going to be doing this a lot different. We're going to be doing a distance learning model. Some of us have that hybrid thing where we're on sometimes and they're off. But how are we going to communicate to our students these expectations? Well, how did you do it before? How did you do it before? You talked to them. You made sure that there were little handy dandy flyers, or you gave them stuff with nice pictures and things to communicate your expectations. Your fellow teachers on Twitter are on fire. If you're not on Twitter, you need to get on Twitter just to follow people that do education. Teachers, those leaders in education, because they share things all the time. They share resources all the time. And I don't like teacher bait teacher. I like teacher give teacher. Teachers give resources. I can't say that anything I do is actually original. I mean, I make it my own because that's what we do as teacher, but I can't say that things that I do are super original. In fact, most of the stuff I've taken from my colleagues that had great ideas. And I think that you're going to find that you're with your expectations and the things that you look for, because you expect things from your students from the list that I given you here. How do you prepare for your class? How do your students prepare for your class? How are you going to do your etiquette when you meet online? Do you expect them to be online? Do you expect them to see you and you see them? I hope so, because we need to make sure that we are all the time in contact, face to face with those students, because we know that when they see our face and they know our personalities and we know theirs, they learn better. And that's what we're trying to do, is teach. You know that students have expectations too. For a long time, for about 10 years, I sat down with my students at the very beginning of the year and I talked about what they expected from me and from the class. And we wrote those down. And then I said what I expected from them. And then back to school night, I talked to the parents what they expected. And if you ask that question, I guarantee you, I think you're going to find that your expectations and theirs can meet. You can find commonality, but you have to ask the questions. Can you give me one word to describe what you think a parent expectation in distance learning might be? Just give me one word.
So, Drew, are you asking them to record into the chat?
Yes, and they're doing it. I see in the chat lots of really great comments about things that parents might expect. Yeah, consistency, communication, grace, yes. Well, we need that too. You're going to find that if you look in the chat right now and you're seeing everybody else's comment, maybe you're on YouTube and you're looking at the comments there, you're going to find that there are a lot of the same comments that you're thinking and you're feeling, because we're in this together. Parents, teachers, and students are all in together. And the key for all of this, I love your comments, keep going. The key to everything is communication. You can't be afraid to ask questions and get inputs from students and parents. You can't be afraid of that. I know I've had some bad parents, or hard parents. Not bad parents, but hard parents. Parents that wanted the best for their students and thought that the best way to get what was best for their student was to push me around. And I know that can get you some whiplash. It makes you feel like maybe you don't want to be in contact with parents. But you know what? I can't recall that many parents that did that. The majority of parents, they are fulfilling exactly what you listed in your chat. They want to be connected to you. They want to be connected to what's going on in the school so they can support their kid. And they want grace, just in case they can't fulfill those things. And we, as teachers, need to communicate that it's okay to have those expectations, and we can meet those expectations, and these are the things that we can meet together. But you first have to ask. Communication is the key to all things distance learning. as well as all things in our normal classroom. And finally, if you have expectations and you expect them to be met, you got to teach them. We're teachers. You can't expect them to just get it right away. You can't expect them to understand right away. You can write a list on the board. You can even give them a nice fancy piece of paper with all these little designs on it and say, hey, do this. But if you don't teach it, your expectations might not be met. As teachers, we have to make sure that we are the ones who teach. And we have to make sure that anything that we want and we desire for our students or for our parents or for our classroom, our expectations need to be taught. My next thing, point 2, you have to have a daily schedule. I don't know how depressed you became when it became distance learning, but I was feeling it. And part of it was that I didn't have a normal schedule. I started earlier because as soon as I got up, my computer was right there. I just started earlier, and then I worked later because my computer was there. And I did a lot of work during that time, but I wasn't taking care of myself. I didn't build that into it. So it is very important to have a schedule. I know that when you're in your classroom, you have a start time, you have an end time. And then in between, you have your subjects, and you have how long you're going to do direct instruction and how long you're going to do everything. And remember, a predictable schedule really helps our students, and it helps us. It allows us to know exactly what we need to do and when we need to do it. But also, it helps our students be organized and consistent. I know one of the biggest complaints that I got from lots of teachers was that their students weren't active. They weren't doing what they're supposed to do. And they were running off and doing things. Well, they didn't have a schedule. Maybe your schedule was like, hey, get this work done this week. That might not be what we need to do this quarter or this semester for distance learning. We may need to have a schedule exactly like we have in our classroom, because this is our classroom. This is our classroom. This is the hand we've been dealt. We're gonna play this deck, and we're gonna win. Remember that social emotional learning and what we need to teach our students, part of it is the schedule thing. Part of it is what we need them to know is that in life we do have a time to do certain activities and certain things, and that we need to get things done and work on it. We need to extend grace. In the parent comments, we had a lot of like extend grace. We might have to give flexibility. Flexibility is okay, but it's not the norm. The norm is our expectation. We need to make sure that we have built-in time for our students to collaborate. We need to make sure we build in time for ourselves to communicate, to do live teaching, as well as just giving the kids a chance to communicate together. We need to make sure that we give time for choice. All of these things on this wheel, we need to make sure we give them time for. But we need to build it into a schedule so that we don't forget it. Can you give me one word to describe your daily schedule when you're in the classroom? When you're in the classroom, how is your daily schedule? Give me one word to describe it. Yeah, if you're looking at the chat and looking at your colleagues and what they have to say, you're going to see yourself reflected in what they have to say, because I do. These are all the things that we do. When a kindergartner walks in the class, what do we give them? We give them structure. We give them consistency, something that maybe they didn't have before. This is why they love school, because we give them purpose. We give them that structure. And we can only do that if we have a schedule and guidance. Yes. Keep it simple, superhero. Right? We're all superheroes. These are the things that I'm thinking of. That when I think of my daily schedule, I need to make sure that I have a subject order, some order in which I'm going to do stuff. Because if I'm going to teach something, I need to know when I'm going to teach it. And the students need to know when that activity is going to happen. And we need to make sure that we have direct instruction involved in it, how we're going to do that. I usually train people on what kind of technology to use, and this training's not so much about that. It's about understanding that you have to do it and then going out and finding it. If you send me an email, I can give you some suggestions. So my email's at the end of the slides. You got to give opportunity for the kids to interact. Class interaction. You need to interact with them. Because when you have interaction, that's when you can pinpoint what kind of help you need to give or how long you need to do for certain things. I mean, as an elementary teacher, how many times you adjust your schedule during the day? I do it all the time, right? I start and I'm like, ooh, I need more time on that. They need more time. We need to practice more. I need to talk about a little bit more. Distance learning should not be different. I mean, how we do it is different, but the idea of teaching does not change. And we have to make sure that we push through that barrier so that we can reach all students. Remember that we have direct instruction and we don't want to overwhelm them. Last quarter, there were some teachers that said that they were, I was on a live Zoom feed for an hour giving them how they were supposed to do things for the day. Well, if I know anything about students, an hour might be too long for their attention span. I don't know how you can explain the whole day in an hour and have them remember it. I mean, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, kindergarten, TK, are they going to remember an hour's worth of instruction? Or are they going to remember 5 minutes of instruction? When you're building your schedule, you need to make sure you build in small portions of time so that you can give small bursts of instruction and then give them the time to interact and do the material. Even if they're doing it at home, they still need that time to interact with the material that you're instructing. So when you're doing a plan, a schedule for your day, you need to build it in that you're only doing small portions of time. Always key. Communication. You need to communicate your schedule. Just like your expectations, your schedule should be clear and concise. Just like in your classroom, you can tell exactly when you're going to do this, when you're going to do this, when your break time is, your recess time, when is your lunch, when do they usually do PE, when do they usually do another activity. That should all be clear to the parents and students, and you should try to follow that as closely as you can, as best you can, because that gives the consistency that we all know best address students' needs. If there's a change, how many times have we changed our schedule? So many times. I mean, we have assemblies, we have this, we have that. We always change our schedules, but we try to be as consistent as we can. But if there's a big change, like, hey, we're not going to be doing reading tomorrow during this time, it's going to be in the afternoon instead because we need more time to do this science activity, then you need to let them know that that's going to happen. Clearly communicate to the parents and students when you're going to change your schedule and try to give them time to adjust. Because if you're anything like me, a change in schedule, a change in my calendar screws me up. It makes things harder. And then my brain starts to be scattered. The kids are the same way. If you don't have that problem, good for you. But I'm telling you right now, do it for me. Do it for the kids like me that need to have a consistent schedule. Obviously, always teach everything. You can't expect them to know your schedule until you teach them the schedule. You can't expect them to follow the schedule until you teach the schedule. You need to make sure that you're always teaching what you expect from the students and what your schedule is, and remind them. I had on my board written down when each subject was in the order, and it had the time every day. Well, now that I'm doing distance learning, I have to make sure that that is also communicated in whatever tool that I use to communicate to my parents, whether it be my website, whether it be Google Classroom, whether it be Class Dojo, whatever you're using as a teacher, you need to make sure that that communication is clear and that you have a schedule that you're trying to keep. Next, student interaction. Super important. If we're trying to look out for the well-being of our students and also making sure that they're learning, you need to make sure that they interact with other students. We all have groups in our classrooms, probably. At least I always did. Groups. And those groups interacted with each other during the school day. And those groups helped each other exceed standards and to learn things. And then those groups kind of moved around depending on what kind of activity I would have for them. That's not going to change. You make sure that your social emotional learning is happening at all times. Some of these kids, they don't get this. They don't get this at home. They don't get this at home. We need to make sure that they get it at school, even if the school is virtual and digital and distance. We want to bring the distant and bring it closer together. So instead of saying distance learning, connected learning. We're connected. We need to make sure that the social emotional needs are met of these students so that they can learn. We know that that is what helps students learn. You need a relationship with the student. Not only do the students need relationships with each other and they need to work together, but you need a relationship with them too. They need to feel free to come to you and talk to you and ask questions. Just like in the classroom. When you have time and you're letting them do independent practice, you will let them come to you and ask you questions or raise their hand and ask a question. Do you have that built into your schedule? Is this part of your expectation? It should be. Because we need relationship with these students. And I know all of you, everybody that's here, I saw how you said in your beginning with the one word that described you. All of you are connected and want to be connected with your students. I don't know if there's a question that Marlene had or that she wanted to highlight, or Karen. I'm kind of going through my slides, and I expected that I would take a break, but I think it's different when you're not seeing people's faces and that sort of thing. And since they didn't unmute themselves, I'm going to continue going forward. But go ahead and interrupt me if there's a question or anything.
Drew, there's 3 questions. Hi, this is Karen. There are 3 questions, and I'm about addressing scheduling with siblings across multiple grades and teachers. Do you have any ideas for that?
Yes. There are problems depending on the school district that you're in. I'm lucky in that my district now is 1-to-1. It wasn't before, and they had one Chromebook shared amongst their siblings, but during the summer we ordered more so that everybody can have their own Chromebook so we don't have that issue, because that was an issue. We do have shared Chromebooks. We have shared resources between students and that sort of thing. But it's super important when you're building your schedule, even if they can't interact with you until a certain time of the day, that you've given them a schedule and your expectation for them to meet that schedule. Like they're supposed to start, if school starts at 7:42 at 5th grade for me, then I make sure that at 7:42, I say, this is your schedule. At 7:42, you're going to be doing this morning activity. And then as a teacher, I'm available at 7:42, just like I would to be in the classroom. If the student can't be there because they have a sibling that has the Chromebook at that time, there's still an expectation there to be met. And that expectation is that that student will meet your schedule. And once again, you need to communicate. And you can't fulfill any of these things without communication between you and the parents and the students. Do they, what is their expectations? So their expectations that they're going to be doing work, that they're going to learn? Is that their expectations for their students? Is that the students' expectations? Because if it isn't, then you need to persuade them that that is important, that we're teachers and we're trying to teach. What was another question that we had? Okay, I'm just going to move forward and then I'll pause at the next point. How about that?
Great.
Okay.
Great.
So, student interaction. I talked about schedule. If you notice, all these kind of blend together, like our expectations, our schedules, and then the student interaction. They're all part of the same complete package. And we need to keep this simple as well. And we need to plan for check-in times. When are you going to check in on the students? Maybe this goes along with that question that just was asked. Maybe they have siblings and they can't check in at certain times. Guess what? You're going to still check in and you're going to still talk to them and you're going to still figure out what they need, because that's what we do as teachers, is we try to address the needs of our students. We need to make sure that direct instruction is short and concise, but we also need to play with the information. We know some of the information might be tough. We might need to break it in smaller pieces. We may find that the students are already ready to move on, but these are things that only happen if we assess our students as we're teaching them. We can't just assume anything. We should never assume anything about our students, but we should make sure that student interaction is there so that we can make the best decision that we can make to address all our students' needs. We need to give them breaks. One of the things that people say all the time is, I can't sit in front of my computer, Drew. And I said, the kids can't either. You need breaks, and those should be in your schedule. And that should also be something that you have for the students in your expectations, is that they get up and they walk around, and you get up and walk around, and that you don't spend all day in front of the computer. Find activities that they can do outside. Find activities that they can do that require them to do other things. And then come back to a computer to share those ideas or those things with you. Make sure that you plan for group discussions as well. Students learn better with students. You need to make sure the student have that access to each other, and that they're able to talk to each other in group discussions. And then obviously we have to monitor as teachers, because you can't just let them have a group discussion without us monitoring, because that is where the meat of teaching comes from, is us listening and evaluating and assessing where our students are. All right, give one word that describes distance learning interaction with your students. One word to describe distance learning interaction. Yeah. So I see a lot of descriptions of flat or awkward or loud, or things that these negative things that come to mind when But if you have your expectations, you have your class norms, and those are instructed and followed, just like in your classroom, how does that turn distance learning? Does that still make it like that? A lot of times when we say the word flat, or we say the word unemotional or one-dimensional, and those kind of things, when we describe our interaction with students, it means that we don't know them and they don't know us. So how do we go about getting to know them better when we only get contact with them maybe for a short time each day? Maybe not at all because they didn't show up. But what if they didn't show up in your classroom? What if they didn't show up for 3 days in your classroom? What would you do then? How would you build that relationship? Because remember, this is your classroom. This may be new reality. It may be hard. But guess what? This is your classroom. So treat it like your classroom. What would you do? How would you do it? I bet you can find some answers if you just look at what you did in your classroom to make an impact with those students and find a way you can do it in distance learning. It could be a phone call. It could just be a conversation with the parent saying, listen, this is important. It could be that you might need to give a little bit of personality to your lessons. I mean, everybody has their own way of teaching. I have my own. And I get kind of goofy and silly, but I let that fly. I let that go because I once asked my students what made their memory of their 5th grade year the best. And a lot of them said it wasn't anything to do with what I taught them, but how silly and goofy I was and the fact that I liked some of the same stuff they liked. Those relationships being built are important. And we'll get rid of that flat, non-emotional aspect of your communication, of your distance learning communication. Remember, got to raise those expectations. You have to say your expectation is to see their face. Your expectation is to talk to them. Your expectation is to do this every day. That might be an expectation that's hard to fulfill. But high expectations should be kind of hard to do, right? Isn't that what we teach our kids? And that's what I taught my kids. In my class, my expectations were high because I expected high things of my students. I expected them to reach higher and achieve higher. If we didn't hit the high expectations, guess what? We reached a lot higher than we would have if I had low expectations. And that is the goal. So always be available and responsive. One of the main things that parents say and complain about at board meetings and all this other stuff is that their teacher was not there, did not respond. But if you have a schedule and it's built and you built your expectations, your schedule up, and you said this is when it is, and you've communicated it, they can ignore it. We all know the parents sometimes do it. But guess what? Most parents will recognize the fact that you have a schedule and that you meet that schedule. Always build in times to communicate and to connect, because we have to teach it always. This slide's always in there. You got to teach everything that if you want them to communicate together, you have to teach it. I maybe should have done the communication slide before the teach it, but this is the first time I presented this. So you don't know things until you ask. If they don't show up or they're not active, you need to ask. Ask why. Find out. Because that's the only way we can meet their needs. That's the only way we can meet our students where they are, is if we ask and we communicate. do we have any other questions, like highlighted questions?
Yeah, so from the YouTube audience, someone was looking for maybe some like specific examples. And I think when I say specific examples, let's go to building community and getting to know students on the first day. Do you have
Okay.
any specific examples of those?
Well, it all depends on what kind of system that you use. Your expectations and your schedules should be published wherever you publish them, whether it be a website, and obviously email. You should email the parents. And if you do phone dialers, if your district does phone dialers, have them phone dial it for you. And those schedules and those what you expect for the students should be sent out before you make contact with them. Then you have a scheduled time for them to meet. If you use Zoom, you can schedule a Zoom. If you do a Google Meet, then you have them do the Google Meet. If they don't have that opportunity, then you give them a call. But at the beginning, it's going to be harder. Nobody's saying it's not going to be hard to communicate and get this going. But your expectations and your schedule should be clear so that the parents know that they can get a hold of you. The students know when school starts, and they know the schedule, and they know when you're going to be doing your instruction and when you're going to make your connections. If they don't make it, then it goes back to my other comment. What would you do if they didn't make it in your class? What if they didn't show up? What would you do then? You need to make sure you make those contacts. So my specific, the reason I can't be super specific, it was my district, I would state that we're gonna get a district-wide Zoom, and we have Google Meet. We're gonna send that out in a dialer. We're gonna send that out as a newsletter. And at every school site, we get dialers going in, and they will have when they're gonna meet. They're gonna have the schedule. All that will be communicated to the parents in as many forms as we can. And those connections can be made. And if they're not made, then you have to go and reach out and make those connections.
So do you have any like examples? I think we're getting a few questions about like what would be a specific, like we have some new teachers on. So like, do you have any ideas for any activities you could do the first day with your students to build community? So like, what are some in-class activities that you recommend that you can share?
Yes. One of the best ways to build community is to share about each other. If they get a piece of paper, and I wish I had paper right here. Paper is behind me. If they draw a picture of a person, and then they write inside of the person who they are, and they can put it up to the camera so you can see, and they can verbally share it with the students, other students. It's important for the students to see that there's commonality between each other, as well as commonality and as well as uniqueness amongst each other, so that they can share those things. That's how you build a community, is that you get this understanding of who each child is, and they get a sense of who their peers are. So that would just be one example of what I would do. I would have them do these things in a way that they can see each other's faces as well, as best I could, and address the students that couldn't be there. Maybe by videoing it and then sharing portions of it, depending on media release and that sort of thing, obviously.
So Drew, some people, there's some good ideas that are coming across the chat, like using Flipgrid,
Mm-hmm.
video in yourself, a Padlet, putting their ideas and so they could all see it on a certain topic, and scavenger hunts as a means to engage students. So if you're looking at your chat, there's a lot of good ideas for activities to connect your kids.
Exactly. So one of the keys to being a teacher, and I said this before at the earlier, is steal ideas from other teachers. They have great ideas, and if you're not on, if you have a Twitter account, you follow a whole bunch of people, make a new Twitter account just for school, and follow teachers. Follow teachers and educational leaders like Q, computer using educators in California. Follow that group. Follow other people that do what you do. They're going to share great ideas on how to communicate and how to get your students to do better in distance learning. I don't have all the answers. I have lots of ideas, and this kind of goes along with my next point. So any other questions before I move on?
I don't know if we'll be able to answer all of them today
Okay.
anyway, so we'll just move on.
Are you sure? Because, all right, we can move on. My next slide, I'm sure a lot of you are feeling of this thing right here. What if this happens, or what if that happens, or what if this thing does? And you know what? That's our kryptonite. I mean, if we're superheroes, we have a kryptonite, something that will destroy us, and this is it. When we lay awake at night, I mean, I've had so many dreams where the students just decided just to go bonkers, and I had no control over them, and all of my expectations and all of my rules and all the things I set up for my class just fell apart, and I had no power to do anything about it. I don't know. Have you ever had that? I bet you have. I have had those dreams often. But the thing is with those dreams is that that's me questioning, what if this happens, or what if that happens, and then realizing I have no power over it. Guess what? We have no power over it. If we have no power over it, stop stressing about it. Only stress over the things you have power over, things that you can do, things that you can do that can make things better. I often think about certain lessons that just failed. Oh, I tried it. It didn't work out. Students did horribly. I was miserable. We just had a horrible time. I'm sure you've experienced that too. But that doesn't mean that didn't have to be taught. It meant that I didn't really have what I needed to teach it at that moment. So, what did I do? I looked and I thought about how I could teach it better. It's very important to realize that we as teachers are used to doing this. This is nothing new. I mean, this is distance learning, yeah, that's new. But making a change, finding out what works better. We do this all the time. Elementary teachers, we have it hands down. We do this all the time. How do we address that student that is not getting this and not getting that? How do we do that? We can do this because we have in the past. If we start questioning and saying, what if, then we start paralyzing ourselves with that fear. We can't do that. That's our kryptonite. It makes us weak. It doesn't mean that we have all the answers. It means that we're willing to work and find the answers and do it right. It may take us some time. You could extend that grace. This is what Winston Churchill said. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Maybe you had a miserable time in the fourth quarter doing distance learning and you're really, really stressed out about doing it now. What did you learn from the past? What did you learn from those moments? How can you change now to make it a better experience for yourself and for your students? Remember, if we come to a lesson and we're excited about it, what happens to our students? They get excited about it. If we go into it and we're like, it's just not right. If we go into it really, really with a horrible attitude, it is contagious. It is contagious. We need to make sure that our attitude is right and that we are making the changes we need to make. And stop dwelling on the what ifs, but focus on the future and what things that can you change to make better. If we start with one plan, this happens all the time. You start out with one plan, you shouldn't be afraid to change your plans. If they're not working out to reach your objective, then each day is a new opportunity to make those changes. Each day is an opportunity for you to make changes so that it can become better. Maybe the first week won't be that great, but guess what? As time progresses, more and more kids will be online, more and more kids will be connected with you, and you'll get to know them. We're all worried about that first day. We want them all to show up. We want to share our objectives with them. We want to share our expectations and our schedules with them and all this stuff. And I know a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, what if they don't show up? Well, if they don't show up, then you have to figure out how to communicate with them and reach in and find out and grab them to get them in. Just like it would happen if they didn't show up to your class and they didn't show up for your instructions. I'm sure I'm the only one that's had students not show up for instruction and miss maybe a week of instruction, maybe 2. And then they come in, and then what do you think? You go, wow, I guess that student doesn't learn anything. No, what do? We say, I need to find a way to get this student up to where they need to be, because that's what we do as teachers. Obviously, communication is key. If there's a problem because of something that happened, you have to make sure that you can communicate that. Talk about it with parents and students. Don't worry about saying, you know what, this lesson is not working out that well. We're going to take a break on it, and I'm going to think on it, and we're going to come back to it. Have you ever said that to your students? You may need to, because things might not turn out. That's fine, because we're going to learn together, and you're going to communicate that. We got to communicate with our students and our parents our objectives, our expectations, our schedule. We have to make sure we're available and have that interaction with students. Do you have any other questions?
Hey, Karen, do we have an opportunity to open up their mics so that they can ask questions?
I don't believe so, not with that many people, although I might be able to do it. We also have people on YouTube Live. It could possibly crash the system. That's my only concern. And we also have some folks on YouTube Live asking questions.
All right.
So, I mean, we have a bunch in the Q&A right now. So if people want to ask additional questions in the Q&A, we have 24 questions that I haven't answered yet.
All right. I'm not done with my presentation. I just want to see if there was anything at this point. I'm pretty close to into my presentation. I have 7 more minutes. So here we go. Did I mention communication? Did I talk about that? I can't remember. Did I say that you need to communicate? I think I did. I think I said that many, many times. You know why? Because communication is the key to everything. Make sure that you get feedback from your students and parents. I want your feedback from this session. I see some people thanking me. That's great. But I need your feedback as well, because that's how we improve as educators, is we make sure that we know that we're meeting expectations, and we make sure that we clarify expectations if they're not. So there's a lot of times that parents expect some things or students expect things and they never communicated those things. But if we ask for their expectations, we can only try to meet the things that they have told us. If their expectations change, you need to make sure you communicate to them and say, hey, you never said that that was an expectation that I had to meet. And if it's not an expectation that you can meet, you need to have that conversation with them. So make sure that you ask and get feedback, because only then can you make sure that you're meeting expectations that you can meet, and that they know and you know exactly how to improve your the process that you need to improve so that they can learn better. All right, another question. Give one way you can give feedback with parents, students during distance learning. Some people have already posted this. So give one way that you can get feedback with parents and students during long distance.
Oh, there's an interesting one. Google Forms. That's great. And
Class
do
Dojo. Text. Remind. Lots of people have Remind. I don't have Remind, but lots of people use that. It's good. Nice. Classcraft. That's cool. I love that thing. Amazing. Oh, nice.
Karen, again, this is Marlene. Could we save
Yes.
could we save these chats and put it into Drew's folder at Eventbrite so that they could go back and glean some of the recommendations?
Yeah, someone else had just asked that, and I had told them to email our IPD email, but instead I think that's a good idea. So I'll communicate with our colleague to do that.
Nice.
So at the end, we could save and download the chat.
And someone's asking, Margie asks, any advice on how to positively share expectation to parents with students in pre-K level when they have to be mostly present as well with their little learners during live classroom meetings? Thanks in advance.
Yes. So if you want to share expectations of a kindergartner, I'm sure a kindergarten, TK, first grade, and you want to share what you expect, how I would start is what the parents expect, because that will give you a clear understanding of where they're coming from when they walk in your classroom, because they've told their kid, this is what I expect of you to give, our family a good name or whatever. They're going to have an expectation coming forward. If you get that expectation from them, it might help you adjust your expectations or explain your expectations to them relating to the things that they've said. So if they say, well, I expect my student to get to know you and get to know the class and communicate, you're like, oh, that's one of my expectations too. I expect them to communicate, and this is how I expect them to communicate. So getting that feedback from the parents right away is important, especially if they're sitting right there next to their child during the beginning of the time. But sharing the expectations, you can share your screen on most devices. Most things you can share your screen. If you have it listed, you can put that up, and then you can have a discussion with the parents, students about it. Try not to, especially in the lower grades, try not to just give a list and say, this is what I expect and I want you to do it. Because you didn't teach it and you didn't communicate. Communication is two-way. You got to have the people talking back and talking to you, and that's the communication part. So always set your expectations and set a schedule, and then be available. There's really just 3 points in my whole presentation that took almost an hour to give. This is it. This slide gives you the whole thing. Set your expectations, set a schedule, and then be available. And remember, we can do it. We can do it. And we're together. We're together. We're doing this together. We're not alone. We're not a solitary person in a classroom. We're a collective. We're CTA. I mean, what have we accomplished together? We've accomplished great things. And we're going to accomplish this too. And we're going to fly. We're going to be that superhero that flies. I want to thank you for joining us today. And obviously, there's lots of things that we could talk about. I have a lot of tools that you could use as well, but you would have to email me at r.warden@westside.k12.ca.us, or you can go to Twitter and find what your colleagues have to say. Lots of the things on this slide deck were from Twitter. I just took them and put them in here. I gave credit to the Twitter feeds that I took them from, but they're from teachers just like you and I, sharing resources, sharing what they're doing in their classrooms. And you're going to find lots of people doing distance learning stuff that you didn't even think of, because I do it all the time.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Drew. We heard a lot of inspirational messages coming from you, and hopefully it will give ideas for the thousands of you that are out there right now in this webinar and in YouTube. You will probably be getting lots of emails asking for more ideas coming from you. So thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And we will make sure that Drew's slides are going to be in his Eventbrite folder, and you can access that information there. So thank you again. Have a good afternoon. We will end our session here. And Drew, are you going to be around for a few seconds?
Yeah, I'll be around. I plan on being around till about 5. That is what I was thinking, but whenever, I'll be here.
How about the next 15 minutes or so? So
Sure.
If some of you have questions, you can
There's
unmute
some
yourself.
Q&A here. Maybe I can pop in the Q&A and see what we got.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to head out. See you all.
Thank you. And we'll just hang up, right, Karen?
Yeah, you guys just end it whenever you're good. You're all co-hosts.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, Drew.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks. Okay. Get some suggestions on how kids can interact. There are a lot of things that they can interact. They don't have to interact depending on the grade level, right? So if they're in a Google Doc, the shared Google Doc, they can just type in and have a little chat going on that you're monitoring. You can set them up with a good question. Always a good question. Good questions are awesome. Give them a good question and have them go and just monitor their discussion. So on the lower grades, what's hard about this is that they don't know their alphabet. They don't know how to type. They don't know those kind of things. So some people are using Flipgrid for that. And Flipgrid costs money. So it's kind of hard to say, hey, use Flipgrid when it costs money. But you can have one grid open at a time, and you can have them answer one question. And then you can erase that question and do another question. And this will allow them to actually watch and listen to other people too at the same time. There's something, if you're doing Google, there's something called Screencastify. It's what our district uses. It allows you to cast with your camera or cast with the screen, Screencastify. And they can interact that way too. And filming themselves or filming themselves presenting stuff that they can then post on Google Classroom or something like that, where they can actually listen to each other speak. It's important that they hear each other's voices. A sample elementary schedule for me would be 7:42 to 8 o'clock was usually warm-up. Was because I did roll and that sort of thing. So I would probably do the same thing. At 7:42 to 8 o'clock would be warm-up, which would be them coming probably in contacting me through Zoom and showing their faces in the morning so I can give roll, so I can see who's with me today. If they don't show up on that time, hopefully I know about it, because we have some students that don't have, they have one device for multiple people, so I would know about that. But I would expect those who have devices that can be there to be there at 7:42 when I started in the morning. And then we would have like a little conversation about what we learned the previous day, maybe a review of what we did the other day, and that would be done by students. My expectation would be that the students mute themselves, and then mute, not me, it just says mute up there, mute themselves, and then unmute themselves to share something about what they learned. Whether I would give a question like, what did you learn in science yesterday when you watched that video, or when you read this article, or when you watched this experiment happen that I did live? What did you learn? And then have them put their hand up, and then I would unmute them to talk. And then I would just unmute the kids, and then they would say them. If there was a particularly quiet student, I would see why. Sometimes they're muted because there's lots of noise in the background. But if there wasn't, if they could unmute themselves even with the noise level and speak just for a few moments so that I can hear their voice, that'd be important. Just like in the classroom, I want to hear everybody's voice. Anyways, 8 o'clock to 8:15 was language. So I would do my language arts during that time. I would have a bit of instruction, pieces of instruction during that time, and have them do activities. Then they would have recess. Then after recess, we would do, I would read to them. So either I would video myself reading, or I'd read a book live. And then we do some math. And then we do math until lunchtime. Then do lunchtime. Then I would do science, social studies at the end of the day. Is usually how I ran my schedule. So that would be my sample elementary schedule.
Drew, can I give some suggestions for if you're looking for lesson plans for particular content areas through the county offices? Some of them have been developing like sequence of lessons, like it's not just one lesson at a time, but maybe for the week or 2 weeks of content that they put together that you could quickly go online and find and download to use for your virtual lessons. So I was on a webinar where these county offices shared their materials, and a lot of it is in the developmental stage. The one that seems to be most on their way, so to speak, is the Kern County Office of Education, or the Kern Superintendent's Office. So Kern County Office of Education has free lesson plans that are built out for each grade level that you could use until you get on your feet and develop your own. The San Bernardino County Office of Education has materials that are social emotionally connected, which is another possibility, is go on the San Bernardino County Office of Education. The San Diego County Office of Education also has lessons that you could download, and the Orange Department of Education, Orange County, has lessons that are geared towards supporting the more needy students, or students who need more supports in the continuous improvement process. And Shasta County Office of Ed is in the developmental stage right now, so I don't think they have much on their site. But these county offices shared a lot of their instructional packages. So that's something that teachers can use to kind of boost what they're doing, or even to buy some time while they're developing their own themes or lesson strands. So anything else that you, did anybody else write or have questions about? So Drew, you have 36 questions.
Yeah, I have quite a few. Somebody asked me where I got the superhero thing. I searched for it. I think it's on Slide Carnival. But anyways, I just looked for it. Somebody else in the CUE community used this slide deck, and I thought it was awesome. So I just looked that up, and it was there. There's a lot more to the slide deck than what I used. And then I added some things too. Let's see. Kahoot can work okay for having the students interact and stuff, but I have found that Kahoot kind of needs everybody to be on a device, a second device, so they would be watching and they would be doing Kahoot. So a lot of kids don't have two devices to do Kahoot at home. So I would not do Kahoot. You could do golly. There's another thing that's similar to Kahoot that you could do that might work a little bit better, because they can do it offline and then they can connect with you because they have the questions on the screen of this. It will go quizzes. Quizzes.
Is it?
Quizzes. It's not typed up right on there. It's not. There it is. Quizzes. Flores just said it. So it's IZ at the end. There it is. And that might work a little bit better than Kahoot. So there's so many digital platforms out there that you can utilize and to communicate with students, or to assess students, or to figure out where they are, or to even communicate with them. It's hard for me. This training really wasn't about that. It was really about how to build a community with your class. And that's all about communication, about having expectations, having a schedule, and then making yourself available. If you do those three things, you're going to build community in your classroom. And also realize that this is your classroom. And it doesn't matter that it looks different. It's still your classroom, and you're still in control.
Drew, there was a question about certificates. I believe you need to request them. If you attended any of the webinars back in May, you either requested them or you were provided them automatically. For this particular series, I believe you need to ask for them. You could... I'm trying to think who you should send it to. If you are able to get back on the Eventbrite, which is our platform for communicating now, is to ask for the certificate, and they will be, we have support staff that are receiving those requests, and they will be sent out to you.
Zarina, it's on the screen. You can also find me at TeachTech77 on Twitter as well. I had a lot of questions about severe to moderate SCC kids, and this is a hard time for those kids. And it's a hard time for you as a teacher, and I understand that. Making those connections with those kids is super important, but you don't know what their ability level is and exactly how they can connect. But you can still set high expectations for their communication and your communication with them, and set your schedule and communicate that clearly. If it is set up and the parents know that you're going to communicate what kind of activities did you do in your class to get them to communicate, try to communicate. Practicing communication is very important for these kids too. Some of them are nonverbal. Some of them just need to hear other kids' voices. Some students need extra support. And those things you need to do the best you can. Remember, you're going to do the best you can, and the next day you're going to do better, and the next day you're going to do better, and the next day you're going to do better. You're always going to improve your practice. And since this is new, you're going to make sure that your schedule and your expectations and you're available. Make sure that those things are happening. And I'm sure that you're going to find that you're going to make your connections with your students, and you're going to find those students that are going to have the problems, and then you're going to be able to address those needs because you're going to be able to find out what they are. We can't address things until we know what they are. Yes, you can use a Google Doc live on Zoom. Just share your screen. You share the Google Doc with all the students so that they have access to it. And then you have your Zoom. You can share the screen, or you can have you can minimize the Zoom on one side of the Chromebook and then have the other side the Google Doc so they can see people and they can see the doc on one side. Scissors and Glue is the app, or Side by Side by Alice Keeler. If you don't follow Alice Keeler on Twitter, you should. But Side by Side by Alice Keeler is an extension, and it will take two browser pages and put it side by side. So you can take your Zoom and you can have your browser side by side like this. So they can see you and the class on one side, and they can have the document on the other. If you want to see their faces while they're typing. Most of the time, you can just get their personalities as they're typing. Oh gosh, there's so many good Twitter resources. Alice Keeler, like I just said, Alice Keeler, she comes out with things all the time, and they're great, and I highly recommend them. And Matt, for Ditch the Textbook, Matt, how come I'm not thinking of his last name right now? Matt, you know Matt. Ditch the Textbook. You gotta get that. Matt Miller, thank you, Hoffman. So Matt Miller, great resource to go to. Twitter is at TeachTech77. I would steer away from doing math workbooks and those kind of things. I would stick with one question at a time and have them work it out and then show you one or two questions. As soon as you give like a whole sheet of problems and you say, oh, you have 20 minutes to get this done or whatever, you're going to lose a lot of kids. So my suggestion would be to give one or two questions that they can answer and then come back so you can see how they're doing. I mean, in the classroom, you usually do a lot of like group activities and work. So you give the instruction to have the class do it so that you can monitor it. And so you need to continue doing that. And as soon as you give a whole worksheet, now the parents are feeling like you're giving them the work to do, not the student. And so who's actually learning? It's not the student, because now the parents might do the assignment. So it's best to do fewer problems and less worksheets. That is my advice. Now, obviously, you can do what you want to do because you know what's best. How many times during the day would I do a Google Meet or Zoom? I would have my Zoom open most of the day because I'm at my desk. So my desk is always open. My kids can always come and talk to me. It's open all day. And the link is there for them to click on and go to. But they need to be on at certain times of the day, and that is in my schedule. So at this time of the day, they need to be on so that we can address this. They need to be on for this time of the day to do this. The rest of the time, my Zoom is just open for students or parents to come and talk to me. And parents are free to come on when I'm not teaching. And that would be an expectation that I would build. I don't even know if the people that ask these questions are still on. So, but hopefully people are still getting my answers.
You still have about 200 people hanging around.
Okay. Okay. Google Meet is great. They now have the grid thing, like the Brady Bunch thing. So you click on the three dots on the bottom right, and then you can change how you view your Google Meet. And you can change it to grid view so they can see each other. So in Google Meet, I would suggest putting it on grid view so that they can see each other, and so that you can see them. And then if they have a question or something like that, they put their hand up, and then you call on them and you unmute them. On Google Meet, which is weird, is that you can mute somebody, but only they can unmute themselves. So once again, you're going to have to teach all of this stuff. This is all new things that you have to teach. And you might take most of the first few weeks teaching them just your expectations and how to fulfill those in Google Meet. But interacting with each other, you just have them talk one at a time. And they're supposed to set up a group pretty soon. So you can set a group of 5 students into a separate meet by themselves, just like you do in Zoom. They're supposed to have that available in Google soon. I'm a Google educational trainer, so I know this stuff. It's coming.
Someone is planning to use an online whiteboard to show student work. So I think that's a Jamboard is that what?
Yeah, Google has Jamboard. My district has Smart Notebook Suite, which you can use. And you can have all the students on the Jamboard or all the students on Smart Notebook at one time and writing on the right board using different devices. And they can use their phone, you can use a phone, they can use an iPad, they can use a Chromebook to do it. And since they were not in my classroom, I would say for them to select the type if they're using a Chromebook, unless they want to play, or unless you want to give them a lot of time to play with the clicking on the pad and then drawing with their finger like that. So it depends on how much time you want to spend with that expectation of what you want them to do. I've already answered that. Ooh, yes. Combo classes. Combo classes. Kids are kids. You want them all together. Have them communicate. It's super important for all the kids to work together, especially in a combo class. You're going to have kids at a higher level. Let's say you're 3-4, so you're doing 4th grade. And you have these 4th grade students that have to know these standards, and you have 3rd grade students that need to know these standards. If you're looking at language arts, you can see the scaling of that. But sometimes in math, it's harder to see the scaling, and obviously social studies is totally different, and the scaling is weird, right, when it comes to those grade levels. But what's not weird is student communication. You can have them talk about what they're learning, about what they're doing to each other. It's okay if they're all together in the room talking about that, or you're having a discussion about things. It's okay if they hear about what a 4th grader you expect of a 4th grader, and then what you expect of a 3rd grader. Because your 4th graders know they have to do one step higher than the 3rd grader. And the 3rd grader knows that if they wanted to, they could do 4th grade stuff. So, and then obviously have times when you're doing stuff just with their grade level too, so that they know that you are addressing the third grade needs as well as the fourth grade needs. But do things together as a class, because you guys are a class collective and it's a community that you can work together. Oh, music teacher. I love music. Oh yeah, you have a really short amount of time. And in order to build the relationship, it might take you a bit longer since you have 40 classes a week at 30 minutes each class. It's going to take you a long time to get to know these kids. But it would take you a long time even if you were in the class, if you were in the classroom, they were coming to you. Think about how you can get the students to show their personality when they do their activities in music. Have them express their creativity in their uniqueness as best you can. And just make sure that you are yourself and that they feel that you're approachable and that you care about them. And then over the course of time, you will get to know them and they will get to know you and things will be great. It will take a while. 40 classes, 30 minutes a week. It's going to take you a while. I think I've answered a lot of these questions. I'm just kind of rolling through. I've already answered that one.
Okay. Do you feel we can just log off now?
Yeah, we've lost quite a few people. But I mean, lots of these questions I've already kind of addressed, and I would love to address more of them in a more clear fashion. But once again, I mean, when you ask questions that demand a whole new lesson, you may take a night to prepare, right? That's what happens when kids ask you a certain thing. You're like, "Ooh, how can I put that thing that they ask into this lesson next so that they're excited about it?" And then it takes you a while to get that going. So I'm trying to put things in, but anyways, it is on YouTube. This is on YouTube, right, Marlene?
It is a YouTube chat. We're saving everything.
Mm-hmm. So it's been recorded. It's on YouTube. It's if you go to the Eventbrite page where you registered, you're going to have links to this thing. So if somebody missed it and you think, hey, they should watch it, then you can give them the link. It will be there. So.
Okay, so we appreciate you, those of you that stayed a little bit longer. We appreciate your time and your willingness to hang around and hear more of Drew. But I think we're going to be signing off, and there will be future webinars, and hopefully you will join us for the others. I think we're going to have a pedagogy. A distance learning pedagogy tomorrow, and then a session on social emotional learning on Thursday. So that takes us through the week, and then we will have our next series of topics on the second week, and you can also access those on Eventbrite. Oh, thank you for flashing those.
Sorry, I had it on my scale. I forgot.
So week 2, we're going a little bit, we're going more topically into like the classroom environment and supports for differentiated instruction. And you will get a message, to join the Eventbrite for the rest of these workshops. So thank you, Drew. Can we, do we need to do something special to save the chats?
No, it's saved automatically. Whoever hosted gets the save. So it will either save automatically in the cloud if that's what it was scheduled, or it's going to save on somebody's computer. So it's not going to save on mine because I didn't have control over that. But we won't have to worry about it. It's basically hands off. Once it closes, it will take care of itself.
Okay, so that means it's on Karen's computer. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to shut us down right now. we're going to be leaving. Drew, are you ready to go?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Thank you. I wish I
you.
could have more time to answer more questions, but I need to eat.
Okay, thanks. Yeah,
All right,
everyone.
bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.